Hey, deserving listeners, sister wives, let's check it out.
I've had to sit there and correct them. I had one of the kids actually call me and talk to me about, like, can't we loosen up the rules so we can see each other as a family? Like, asking me. And I went, this is not me. I didn't make up these rules.
Yeah, that would be pretty uncomfortable, but I don't know. You're an adult, Robyn. And to go from that to Janelle and Christine are jerk faces, that's a stretch as well. Because, the kid could have independently just thought that. Also, the kid could be actually in a nice way trying to negotiate and might be even trying to negotiate with Cody through her. So I don't know if Robyn's jumping to conclusions. It's just unfortunate that there's just a lot of misunderstanding, I think. It's hard to watch.
And I very specifically pointed out that their dad, Cody, is not somebody to be run by one of his wives.
Okay, so more ticks in that column, I've been wondering. And Cody isn't refuting that because she's saying it in front of him right now that, essentially these aren't her rules, meaning they're his rules. And I think meaning that Robyn naturally wouldn't have been as cautious. So that puts that to rest, I think.
I'm just going to say it out loud that I just need everybody to stop, directing it my way, if that's what's happening in your home with your children, whatever it is, because I can't have Ari and Saul stay 2 weeks away from Cody.
Okay, so you can play along and say you're Janelle, because I think she will chime in. She tends to, in a constructive way. How would you respond? Because in one way you're being accused, because I think it's likely Janelle's kids who are, it's likely Janelle's kid is the one who reached out. I'm just taking a guess. It certainly wouldn't be Mariah. Well, I guess it could be, but I don't think it would be. So if we're Janelle, how do we respond in a constructive way while also accounting for our feelings and our agency and our self-worth or something? So you could say, so you could pause it and just, because this is really important actually to have as a skill. And if you've never had it modeled to you, some people will comment below or email me and say to me that they appreciate when I role play constructive communication because they've never seen it before. They've never heard it before. They've never had it modeled to them. They've never known what those options are. And I found in therapy that that's a lot of what I do with some clients is just modeling how to communicate, how to say the jumble of ideas that are in your head in a variety of different ways. And that's the thing that I'm always saying to my clients is, I'm not telling you what you should say. I'm saying there are other options to what you said, and here are 3 or 4 other options, and you choose. If you want to continue to say it the way you said it, then you're the one that makes those choices, and I'm not there. But here are some other options, and when you don't have those other options, then you don't even know what you're missing. So you can pause it right now and think, okay, how would you respond? All right. So now that we're back from that, whether you pause it or not. Sometimes I wonder if anyone pauses. Comment below if you pause because I don't do that very often, and it's such a professor-y thing to do. I would do that with my students. I mean, I wouldn't tell them pause because we'd be in person, but I would say, take out a pad and paper and write for. I like it when people actually write on paper. I don't, give the lap. Anyway. So with Janelle, this is one option. Okay, be like, oh, Robyn. So first off, I think you're talking about one of my kids. I don't know, but if one of the kids called you, I'm guessing it was one of my kids, and I want to tell you that I'm sorry that happened, and I don't talk shit about you. I even if I have a problem with any of you here, I have a policy that I don't do that in front of the kids. If anything, I will err on the side of sticking up for you, even if sometimes I don't want to, because I follow a principle of not scapegoating or not creating rifts like that. And I would hope that everyone does that for me. So there's that. But could I have done more to make sure that the kids understand that they need to be more respectful. Yeah, maybe. But I'll tell you, for some of my kids, my older boys, they're really suffering. And, they're young and they don't have the diplomacy that they will when they're more mature. And they have ideas about things. And this is hard on them. This is rough. All of us are suffering. This is a really scary time. And so but I apologize on behalf, if one of my kids made you uncomfortable, I'm sorry that happened. I'll also say that it's a possibility that if it was my kid that called you, that they weren't blaming you necessarily. They might have actually just been were they rude with you? What happened? So that's one option. Another option is to say nothing. Another option is to say, I don't appreciate being accused of this sort of thing. I resent that. Okay, it's very, and so you, as a mature adult, we have to think about what outcome do I want? And sometimes I'll do this with people, and you can do it for yourself, and you could pause it again and think about what Janelle's hoped for outcome is. And as therapists, this is another exercise that I will do with my students. And it's strangely not something that is taught to a lot of therapists, but it's an obvious exercise and really should be 50% of graduate school is, as a therapist, what are you hoping for in this session, or what are you hoping for in this moment, or what are you hoping for with this treatment, right? And of course, anyway, I won't go down that road. But so what would Janelle's hoped for outcome be in this moment, or with this conversation, or in this family? I think Janelle would want family harmony and for people to get along, and for her kids to be respectful and to grow up to be good kids and to not be jerk faces. So I think she would want things to go well and might want things to start off, because I've been yammering a lot, by the way. They're literally like 90 seconds into this meeting and I've been talking for hours already. Anyway, so, y'all said, wait till you get to season 15 or 14 or something, because we're in 16 now, and yeah, shit's going down. And so if Robyn wants harmony and goodwill, and at the same time is thinking, I feel like I'm being treated a little, so maybe we could think about that. So let's say that Janelle has the diplomatic response and the mature differentiated response. After that's kind of wrapped up, and depending on how Robyn responds, Janelle could say, okay, now that that's wrapped up, I just want to say, Robyn, kind of hurt my feelings that at least it sounded like in your tone of voice that you were accusing me of conniving behind your back, or conspiring against you, or talking shit about you, or encouraging my kids to talk shit about you or something. And, it kind of hurts my feelings, because I feel like my track record demonstrates that I wouldn't do that. And I guess I just want you to know I wouldn't do that to you. I like you. and plus I just wouldn't do that. So it kind of hurt my feelings, because it kind of sounded like that's right. So, a lot of things can happen. I doubt any of these things will happen. I think Janelle will have a good differentiator, or I hope she does. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Regarding access to therapy, one of the barriers is that insurance companies can be difficult to work with. And this can make it difficult for clients, but it also means that for therapists to be able to pay off their student loans and pay their bills, they often have to charge fees that many clients cannot afford. There are various proposed solutions, but until those measures are established, we have to figure out other ways to help people to get the help that they need. Well, one of those solutions that we have available today is BetterHelp. In my neck of the woods, therapy can cost as much as $300 per session or more. But with BetterHelp, clients can save, on average, up to 50%. Also, I often talk about the need to shop around, because it's critical that you and your therapist have a strong relationship. BetterHelp makes it a lot easier to shop around, because you can easily switch therapists if you need to. So, your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
I am following the rules very, very closely. Why in the world would anybody think that I'm somehow behind this? Like, why me? They don't know who I am if they would think this of me.
It is an interesting question. I was wondering it too. I mean, it is logical on some level from a certain angle. It's not necessarily the only story, but when you have 4 sister wives and Cody is spending all his time with one. Also, it's true that Robyn is more assertive than the other sister wives. Christine, you said that. Christine was like, when you came into the family, you stood up to him. And so they could see Robyn as, when a woman is being assertive, she is, especially in traditional gender cultures, when women will be labeled as the B word, as a tyrant, whereas a man will be labeled as assertive and manly or something. And so maybe we're all, including myself, falling victim to that nonsense. And so there's that. But, she could have done this in a totally different way. She'd just be like, hey, I just want everyone to know that I am in the same boat that you are. I'm not a fan of the level that he is taking it to, but I'm okay with following it. But I just want to be clear that I'm not the one. He's not complying to my rules. I'm following him. I'm okay with it. I'm not like, I'm not upset about it really, but it is kind of bothersome at times. So I just want to be clear, he's not doing what I'm dictating to him. Now, this could all be lies. If someone was abusive and controlling, they might try to mask that. I don't know.
I would try to cause some sort of disharmony in the family.
My kids are blaming Robyn for making the rules. These are the rules that my doctor has given us. And these are the rules that we're making our nanny.
And this is just further evidence that Cody isn't doing his job as a father. It's his kids. His kids are blaming Robyn. If I heard that, if I were in Cody's shoes, I'd be like, oh, shit, I've got to have a talk with my kids. Or I wonder what's motivating that. It sounds like the kids are suffering and want to see their siblings or me more. So I should probably try to smooth that over.
But she's agreed to them and they're abiding by them. And so I'm like going, well, the rest of the family should do this as well.
I can't. I'm just not opening that can of worms. There's a lot of drama. Yep, there is.
I brought up the nanny to Cody because the kids have all brought it up to me. And if the nanny's the goal, what can we do in our home to make it so Isabel and Truly can hang out with their siblings? What's not doable? I haven't even looked.
Okay, so at least in the edit, Janelle didn't really have a response. Christine has a good response here about let's just get back to trying to work this out, which is differentiated of her to do.
Over it.
Where were these rules when I asked?
All right, so we're seeing the list here. Rules for family social exposure, wear masks in public. Okay, sanitize hands after shopping, wash hands often. Sanitize, purchase products and groceries with alcohol wipes before placing inside the house. When I read that kind of stuff, it just sounds so stupid and silly, right? But for a good amount of time, Stacy and I did that. Not every house did that, of course, but it's like a different lifetime ago. It's so strange, but there was so much unknown about how it was transmitted, about what it would do. And, they would say that vulnerable populations were the most at risk, right? And older people. And, when the pandemic started, I was 49. And there's a retirement home down the street that starts at the age of 55. I'm 54 right now. I can move in. And by the way, this retirement home is called Shag. Shag. To my British listeners and viewers, there's an old folks home that we call it. I don't know if that's offensive, but retired individuals will live in this facility, and the facility is called Shag. Essentially, that's like a retirement community in England called Fuck. Right? To shag? To screw? Isn't that what it is? Anyway, but I remember, and I remember Stacy even pointing this out. I was just like, you might be a vulnerable I don't talk about my health specifics, but there are some things there that put me at risk, and so it was terrifying. And if you can, and it's not too much of a bother to the two of us, for Stacy, because it was pretty easy for us to follow this. Yeah, Stacy would get the sanitizing wipes and would wipe down groceries. And one of the things that we also would do is if we could, we would put all the stuff in the garage for a couple days to let any virus die or something. And I don't even know if, I think later on they learned that the virus can live way beyond a couple days. But anyway, we were just, I'm embarrassed to even say all the things that we did. And some of you might think, oh, well, that makes you, Kirk, biased for Cody and maybe Robyn. And maybe, I'm guessing if I was a different sort of person during the pandemic, I would be more apt to see this list and be like, oh my God, Cody is crazy. So I think it's, looking back, there was a lot of craziness happening, and there was a lot of hurt, and there's a lot of pain, and there's a lot of differences, and I understand all of it. I understand people that took a lot of precautions. Like one of the things I remember at the time, like spring break, that very first spring, right? The very beginning of the pandemic, right when everyone was like, you have to socially distance. This has to happen. And the vast majority of people were following that, and it hadn't been politicized yet, in a partisan manner. And there was a big spring break thing in Fort Lauderdale in Florida or something. And no one was admitting, all these young people, college-age people, were doing this trip, but they weren't admitting it, and they weren't posting on social media. But I can't remember the outfit that did this analysis. Is they looked at the conglomeration of cell phone records and found that a lot of cell phone accounts were pinging in the rest of the United States one week, and in Fort Lauderdale or wherever it was in Florida another week, indicating that hundreds of thousands of people had actually gone to for spring break. And I remember the time just being really disgusted by that, because even if none of them are prone to death, or they're taking their lives into their own hands, I suppose everyone to some extent has that right. But I was like, what about all those people that they might live with, or their parents or their grandparents or whoever, And I remember being pretty upset. But looking back through the eyes that I have now, I think, well, when you take all these precautions, there's a price of your sanity and your well-being and your relationships, and trauma. People can become traumatized when they're isolated to a certain degree, and there are long-lasting effects of that, right? You have long COVID, but and death, of course, but you also have like 15 years of depression and isolation and social anxiety because you refuse to cultivate, to foster that connection or that routine or something, So, this is just me. You can have your own point of view, but looking at this at first, I'm like, that's crazy. But then I'm like, well, I think it's impossible to require that everyone back then have a level head and also know what to do, because it was so scary at the time. It was just so scary. Millions and millions of people dead. Millions and millions of people dead. In the United States, what was it at the final tally after a year or two? What was it? I don't know. It was millions. And there are a lot of people that died that weren't identified as having died from COVID. Anyway. And then you have people that were dying not because of COVID, but because people were taking too many precautions. There were people that were, for example, isolating and died from something that they wouldn't have died from if they weren't social distancing, because someone would have noticed and taken them to the hospital, or they refused to go to the hospital because they were worried. Anyway, it's just a crazy time. And so I'm gonna try not to judge this and try not to judge myself. And I hope you do the same. because I think we can all just give ourselves a pat on the back for just getting through this. And for some of you, some people might not have gotten through this, or you might have long COVID. So I want to recognize that. But anyway, remove shoes outside. Shoes. Okay. Change clothing after visiting shops, other homes, or businesses. Okay. Yeah. Only local family allowed in home unless abiding in these rules. Only local family allowed. So I think, the nuclear family, like Christine and her kids, I think, allowed in the home. No eating at sit-down restaurants, only takeout. Well, I'm surprised they're even allowing that. Limit shopping, use curbside pickup. Yeah, that's all pretty consistent. All right, well, let's adjourn there. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.